Educational Development. Welcome to the inaugural eTeaching Luncheon. Already a second one has been planned. This grew out of the last couple of years called eTag, Electronic Teaching Action Group. Faculty members would meet and talk about how technology was enhancing their teaching mission here at Boston College, and also trading stories about what was more effective in the classroom, and just give a chance for faculty members to see how each other were bringing this new technology to their teaching mission. This afternoon we have Aaron Walsh, who will be talking about immersive education. Just this morning I saw in the Boston Globe, maybe you saw it too, at the second page of the business section, a little promo about something called Second Life. Has anyone ever heard of Second Life? Second Life is a fascinating environment. I'm sure that Aaron will talk more about similar things, but this is sort of hit the mainstream today. Over 1 million people have joined Second Life. It's like a little world, virtual world living inside of the World Wide Web. It's fascinating. I haven't had a chance to join yet, but I've already sent the URL to my son. Please attend with us the second eTeaching Luncheon that will be on December 5th. I don't know where it will be. It'll be here. John Gallagher from the School of Management will be talking about blogs, podcasts, and websites to publicize course content. So I can be sure that I'll be here listening to this. And Aaron is going to dazzle you, I'm sure. Aaron Walsh. Thank you.
Thanks for the introduction. Actually, we'll talk a little bit about Second Life. And what I'd like to do is talk about how I got to where we are today, which was a colossal mistake. I was here at Boston College working in the technology department, and I was running at the time in the late 80s, going into the early 90s, something called the ATC, the Advanced Technology Center. And in the center, we were getting, for the first time ever, multimedia on computers and small amounts of three-dimensional interactive content. And I was working with my colleague at the time, some might still remember Paul Dupuy and Bernard Gleason. With Paul, I was working on a virtual reality system. We were actually building what we thought would be a useful virtual reality system for education and personal use. And based on that, in 1992, I thought, it's just a matter of a couple of years before this is everywhere. I ought to leave Boston College and do something in this particular field. 15 years later, we're getting close to it. We are at the cusp of actually what I was thinking about, dreaming about, and feeling like this is going to be huge. There were, when I say colossal, there were huge barriers that I didn't anticipate when I got into this. One of them was I took for granted how fast the networks were on a campus dedicated to inter-campus communications. And I didn't realize how bandwidth thirsty these applications were. I also took for granted how fast the computers had to be. We had a luxury at Boston College, especially in that lab, of having the fastest personal workstations in the world at the time. And so as we're going around, fooling around in this immersive media, it was very crisp, it was very responsive. And when I left Boston College, I had to buy my own equipment. So instead of having a $50,000 workstation, I had a $2,000 or $3,000 Macintosh. Started to run this stuff on a $2,000 or $3,000 Macintosh at a time. It was very much a Devo type of situation. And so those were the key factors that prohibited this from coming forward, but there were others that were actually preventing it, and I'll talk a little bit about them. Fast forward and stick with this technology coming to today, and Second Life is an indicator that this is ready for prime time. It has cracked the 1 million user mark. Companies are flooding into it. You're going to see the same basic technology being used here. For purposes of introduction, I teach in Boston College, Woods College of Advanced Studies, and we've been given pretty much an open road. Paul Woods saw this technology 2 or 3 years ago. He said, if you need to do with it, do with it. Do it in classes, and we've been actually doing this into our courses here. I run the Grid Institute, which is the technology institute that puts together the right companies and the right universities for doing this type of technology. It's very compute expensive, very bandwidth expensive, and so you can't do it really by yourself. You need a progressive consortium, which is what the Grid Institute is. I'm going to start off with some traditional slides, just to give an idea of where we are. Where is distance learning? Well, yesterday it used to be correspondence courses, tapes, maybe satellite. And if one of those things broke down, you had to travel, if you were fortunate, to get on the campus to take the course. Today we're really at what I would consider a modest broadband and fast computer stage. So we're at what I consider a tipping point, and I think that a lot of people in this room consider a tipping point, where email is being used quite a bit, threaded discussions like Yahoo groups, Blackboard, etc. Social networks have been formed. Anyone's heard about MySpace and Facebook? These abilities for people to interact online and communicate online are fast becoming the norm. And of course, CD-ROM, DVD, and some low-quality, generally low-quality media over the internet. Still if you're on campus, getting a big, high-quality video is not a problem. You want to deliver that same piece of video to a student, they need to have a fast broadband connection. So typically, it's a lower quality video. Where we're really heading, in where immersive education is poised, is on tomorrow. We're going to see the tip of the iceberg, and what that requires is massive broadband. Everybody has to have broadband, and they have to have fast broadband, not just your typical broadband with low-end broadband connection. We need a blazing fast computers, thanks to the speed at which computers are progressing today. That's a non-issue. That issue actually has been solved for us. And we're also starting to see mobility. You've seen all the students, just 5 years ago, you didn't see students walking around doing this all day long. Now you see, even me, right before this, I'm checking it out, I contacted one of my colleagues that hadn't come down here. We're starting to see video and course material being distributed over this. We think that's the future. We think it's happening. And what I want to do is take a step back and show you, focusing on education, what can you do here? Call it a new dimension of distance learning because it really does bring three-dimensional, interactive, and immersive three-dimensional technology to 3D. 2D is, of course, what we're all used to today. See a video, it has a height, has a width, 2 dimensions. Same with photos, 2 dimensions. Same with text, 2 dimensions. What 3D brings to the table is the notion of depth, and not just seeing something that looks like it might have depth associated with it, being able to go into that, turn it around, play with it, and interact with it in a way that you can with 2-dimensional 3D data. So I want to take a quick look here and try to drive that notion home. Here is a screenshot of a cube and a sphere, a traditional 2-dimensional look at an object. But if I switch into 3D mode, this is what I get. The ability to take those and explore some relationships. The ability to peer inside and see the structure of some of those. And also some of the ability, for example, to change your distance and basically the content that I'm looking at. So that's a basic notion of the difference between 2D and 3D. When you look at the other you actually interact. To illustrate how powerful that can be, let's consider the notion of a 2-dimensional map of Boston College. And here's a map of Boston College in 2-dimensional form. What is on it stays, and you have to infer the rest and figure it out. In 3-dimensional embodiment, we'll take a look at something called Google Earth, which a lot of people are now familiar with. Google Earth is one of the most prevalent forms of 3D out there today. Tens of millions of people use Google Earth. It is a 3-dimensional map and allows you to interactively explore our space, our world. Now, if I wanted to, I could grab it and spin it around and come to a certain area. Just keep driving down. It's closer and closer. So a huge amount of satellite data, and as you'll see, it comes refined over a period of time and comes streaming in. But the real utility here is not so much this, although this is really a wow factor. You'll actually progressively render in and start to come in. The real power here is just to do a free-form search. For example, I want to search for Boston College. See, I've got a cold. I want to find Boston College Health Services up in the corner here. Zooms back out and brings me on over to the portion of the map where Boston College is, driving on down. Yeah, you can get a little nauseous doing this. I actually can't talk about that. There is what we call virtual reality sickness. We're not really even in virtual reality right now. But it does get the idea that you could get a little bit sick of it. So I'll start driving down. Again, this is just comparing a two-dimensional map to a 3D map. You say, well, what's the big deal? Why would you care? 2D has serviced us very well in the past. Why would you spend any time and effort going into a three-dimensional environment? And the notion is very simple. You give people control, as I'm doing here. I'm zooming in wherever I want. I'm going to also tilt the map out, get a different perspective. And now I'm going to rotate it and get a feel. So you can sense that not only do I have more control at my fingertips, I get more information, and it's information that I control. For example, I'll pull this back out for a moment. I'm going to find some directions. So here's where I want to go. It's just the main 140 Common Ave address. So let's say I'm down the street, the Hamlet Street here. See if I can find that. This is one of the places I used to live when I was working in Boston College a long time ago. Hamlet Street. And I want to see where it is relative to Boston College. It shows me the map. Again, interactive three-dimensional content. You see down here the key, I can show roads. I'm going to turn on other roads so I can see main roads. I want to see maybe I'm hungry on my way to get to campus. So I click on dining. There we move plenty of places to eat. I'm going to turn those off. I want to turn that off. What I want to do is start a tour, and this gets pretty messy, but again, we can zoom in for higher resolution. Let's go see where I used to live and what it used to take for me to get to campus. And quite literally, that is the block. This is Berkeley College of Music. Right here is a Starbucks. Right here is a Dunkin' Donuts. It's perfect for where I live, and there's the map that shows me how to get to Boston College driving. I'll take a quick tour and have it show me. And it actually does all the turns, so you can start to visualize. And that's one of the powers of three-dimensional technology. You can visualize in a way that is natural for you content that might be impossible for you to understand otherwise. Now, if I give you a list of instructions, all these instructions, right here, well, that means nothing to me unless I'm on the roll, holding up one-hand screen and I'm trying not to miss an exit. But if I walk through this once or twice, my brain now is given some sense of navigational space, makes it a little easier. Again, the idea of 2 dimensions versus 3 dimensions. We went by, already I think we went by, we went past Fenway Park already. Looks like it might be a reservoir. So that's the gist of going from a 2-dimensional learning to a 3-dimensional learning. 3D is native to it. It's what we expect in the real world. And when you take that to a learning environment, you get orders of magnitude more information at the fingertips. But you get a lot to it. And the key really is dynamic 3D. Just looking at something that has been created with 3D really isn't all that powerful. It's just a better version of 2D. But as you saw, my ability to walk in, turn around, and interact with 3D, that's what gives it the power. Let's see some examples of how this might actually be applied in the classroom. Here's an example of a 2-dimensional classroom, or pardon me, a 2-dimensional space. Here is a called Doge's Palace. It's a 2-dimensional photo. This might be a field trip to Italy, where students were sending back information, or maybe it's a photograph of that art palace. And here's the same thing in 3D. Suppose I couldn't go to it. Now I'm controlling this. I'm turning around here. There's the door. How large I was in the space, I could turn on what's called my avatar or my character. There you go. I got a wonderful part on the top of my head. That's dippity-doo. Now, this is not the real thing, but it's better than the 2-dimensional photo. As you can see, I'm getting information that I wasn't before. Let me also show you a few things. I'm going to turn off my character and show you a couple of things that you can do that are better than the real world and much better than the photograph. I can fly. Come on in, and as you can see, I really am controlling this myself. It is all choppy. It's not a pre-recorded zoom on through here. show the student all the important pieces of this environment and what's called a viewpoint. This is free software. It's trying to get me to purchase it, but it's also free, and we do use this in class. And it's a couple $100 for the students to buy. None of them do. I don't. If you can put up a little floating box going around, it's not a problem. We can also set up academic pricing, and there are other things that don't have those types of advertisements on. So here you get a feel for another interactive space. The idea is to bring the environment to the learner. Instead of just photos, instead of just reading about it, bring them into it, allow them to choose a character, an avatar or a character, and then, significantly, meet in that space with the faculty and other students. I haven't shown you that yet. That's where really, I think, all of the connection points really happen. This is useful for students, and you can see some of the detail here. This is useful for students because they get a sense of the space, but what really happens in the learning environment is students come to get together in person and learn together and share information. By putting them together in the same virtual space, much like Second Life, in fact, Second Life is a great example of it, you have characters, students choose what they want to look like. We require them to use their real name, so no matter what they choose to look like, we notice them. And then we get together in real time, in a real space. I'm going to go ahead and quit out of this and take a look at a couple of other examples.
Hello everyone, welcome to Immersive Egypt. There are 4 cubes in this room. Go ahead and explore all. Black cube. Black cube is important. We're going to meet inside of there later. So do that last. Spend no more than say about 5 minutes on each cube, and then save the black one to last. We'll meet there in about 15 minutes.
So here's an example of how we're driving those online classes today. There's video, so they get a sense of it's me, video and voice. Here's an example of exploring interactive Egypt. There's a map. It's called a map or an environment. Look up and look down. And I told the students that there are a bunch of areas, a bunch of cubes in this space. I'm just going to give you a peek at the space before we go through it. So what we have here is, again, truly interactive. I can show my character again. See, there he is. I'm going to bring him back, float him on back, and I'll hide him. And what we have here is a mixture of media. Rich media being mixed media. It's not all about just 3D. It's about mixtures of media. Here, for example, is one of the cubes I told the students to go explore each of them. They click on it. It's my voice.
Welcome to TouchToon. To discover more about the treasures of TouchToon, move your mouse over every nook and cranny in this room. There are over 14 treasures that you can find along your way. To navigate, use the lower left-hand corner, where you'll see 3 boxes. The first box, which you're in now, is the antechamber. After you explore the antechamber, you can go on to the burial chamber. And when you're done with the burial chamber, you'll end in the treasury room. When you've explored and found all 14 treasures in the tomb, close the window to return to the 3D chat, where we'll continue our 3D classroom.
So here's an example.
In the
I'm
antechamber.
going to go ahead and close it up. An example of integrating 2. That was 2D. That wasn't interactive and spinning it around. It was a traditional Flash. If you're familiar with Flash, it's the traditional graphic format from the web, integrated with this 3D space. My voice over it. So I introduce the students with video and voice, and then I interview. And then I tell them to come back. We're going to meet in this space and do some more chatting. Here's some other examples. And what we find is that the students, because there are things to see, and I'm going to show you some small snippets of video. We're not doing a lot of classes, so I can't show you students who are with me. But what the students tend to do is they jump in and they do exactly what I'm doing. They start to examine. And you see all these little people running around looking at different things. Now, if I were to tell them to read a chapter of the book, they might gloss through it, maybe hopefully buy a used book that's for them so they can get the crib notes real quick. So when you do something like this, we're talking to a generation of students who've been weaned on video games, and so this is interesting. I often find that students are in here exploring this stuff alone, coming back sooner than I tell them to, and they're coming here after hours doing it because it's interesting to them. Here's another box.
In ancient Egypt, the scarab was considered sacred and was used as the model for amulets, necklaces, seals, and other religious tokens. the scarab beetle was as important symbolically to the Egyptians as the cross is to modern-day Christians. On this page, we see two types of scarab beetles. On the left side of the page is a shaper scarab, while on the right side of the
That's
page
me interacting
is
with
a
that.
stag.
Here's another example of two different types of scarabs.
Associated with setting fire to thatched building.
I'm zooming in, I'm looking at it. And this may seem trivial, but the notion is the student is spending time, instead of just looking at a photo, a lot of times they'll do something like this. The idea that they can see I'll pull the audio up. The notion that they can actually get in deeply and previously impossible really appeals to them. Not too many people have actually been in the jaws of a beetle that big. Because even that little mouth, ooh, they smile. I'll walk back out. I'll close that. And close that. So I'm almost done. We've gone through two of the forms of media. And what is important about immersive education is that it's designed, as you can see, to immerse the student and to give them an environment. And also it's not just 3D, it's not just video, it's not just audio. It is a way of weaving all that together and really saying, well, if we're doing audio and video today, and we have multimedia in the form of interactive 3D, if we stitch those all together into a comprehensive learning environment, what can we do with it? Another cube, another term on the information. And I'll talk a bit about the authoring. We didn't create any of this. That was important. It was a tremendous amount of information with respect to faculty we created and out of control. We put it together. We assembled.
I'm standing at the entrance to one of the most famous archaeological sites in the world, Egypt's. About 500 years, from 1500 BC to 1000 BC, Egyptians buried their pharaohs in grand underground complexes. Their palaces, they're called wadis in Arabic, here in the Theban hillside, the one chosen for royal burials.
All right, I'm going to jump. It could take a long time to get through all this. I'm going to see if we can get
The last ruler of Dynasty 19 was a woman named Tausert, whose tomb was cut into the base of a sheer cliff at the head of the southwestern branch of the Valley of the Kings. Tausert was the chief wife of Seti II, and she became regent for her young son, Siptah, and then Pharaoh. These changing titles are all reflected in the changing design and decoration of her tomb. Intended for him, abandoned, and KP-14 was then remodeled for burial. Scenes of Tausert were plastered over and replaced with plaster has fallen away in some parts. They show images of Siptah, replaced with
Awesome. But to get the notion on this particular module as well, it is a mixture of photography and 3D technology. The 3D is the tour. It brings the student on an automated tour. They're not exploring it by themselves. They're actually brought through their whole different things, and here's a two-dimensional map. They can examine the photos in more detail. We won't do that. But it's, again, the notion of mixing this media together in an interesting way. Mixing in So part of the fun here is that the students have to go exploring to find these cues. Makes it a little bit of a game. Again, for a generation, it's really or as fun as you can get. It's not exactly dazzling compared to actually playing the game, but it does immerse them in a different way.
Finish the other three cubes. This is the last cube to go through. There are three photos here. There's one share, one of two children, and there's one of the pyramid. Click on share and then the two children first. Watch those videos. When you're done, click on the pyramid and join me and your fellow classmates in the immersive 3D world through which we'll explore Egypt.
seriously just for a moment. One of the great art exhibits ever to tour the United States is the Treasures of Tutankhamun, or King Tut. But I think it's a national disgrace the way we have commercialized it with trinkets and toys, t-shirts and posters. And about 3 months ago, I was up in the woods and I wrote a song. I tried to use the ancient modalities and melodies. We'd like to do it for you right now. Maybe we can all learn something from this.
Anybody actually remember that?
Now, wasn't he a wonder young man? He never!
Another part of the fun learning environment. That was just an example of threading in the video. Let's pretend like we finished all those modules and then we'll go on and do a quiz.
This course on ancient Egypt is now complete. The quiz below will test your knowledge on the subject matter you've learned today, after which you can return to the 3D chat room to continue the discussion with fellow students if you'd like.
All right. So the idea there was to give you a sense of, if you're going to create an immersive learning environment, what does it encompass? Well, it really is what the faculty wants. In this case, I wanted to put together a kind of a lighthearted but still informative exploration of Egypt, ancient Egypt, in some particular tombs. When I immerse the student in that, we actually get together in that space. I want to show you that in a moment as well. Let me show, this is a good example. I'm going to talk a little bit about the levels of immersion. I know we've got a time limit, so I'm not going to go through all of that. But we have different levels of immersion, at least when it comes to this type of technology. There's the surface, which is really already what a lot of people are doing. So the steps are already being made towards more immersive education. Where surface is sharing information back and forth with the student, what we're doing today. A little more deep, but still shallow by comparison to what you can do, is two-way multimedia. Being able, for example, to have a webcam where you can talk to the students back and forth. Interactive spaces that we just saw, being able to go through that. Social network to connect students to each other. We actually do that. We'll have students talk and form groups among themselves. Keyboard and mouse input. I will skip the notion of standard definition in Web 2.0, but that comes into play. And then we dive down into a much deeper level of immersion. And this is really rich multi-way multimedia. High-quality webcams, high-quality interactive 3D, audio back and forth with the students. The notion, again, being to immerse them into a space, ideally a shared community space where they meet with the faculty, they meet with their fellow students, and they get to do something relative to that course. The notion of spatialized audio is important. It's a technical note, but the idea is in the real world, when you hear a sound and you walk closer to it and you walk around it, maybe to the left, one ear hears it louder than the other. When you back off, it attenuates, it gets softer. Those type of clues, those type of audio clues are also very important for three-dimensional environments. Let's see. I'm going to keep on going through here. I'm going to skip because we're on a bit of a time schedule here. I'm going to skip some of this, but we get down to the notion of basically super high quality, and then this question, head-mounted displays. Now, this is when I first started. I said, things went wrong. This is what we thought the world would be using: stereo goggles, bodysuits, and running hamster cages, and it would be a nice virtual environment. Turns out not to be true. Stereo goggles, as you'll see, I'm going to show you a video now. You'll see me wear it for a moment, and it's a little set of goggles that I put over my head. Each eye gets a separate video, slightly different perspective, and it gives you a real sense of depth. That has great immersive qualities. It also tends to make students vomit. There's a reason for that, and it's a technical hurdle that's not going to be overcome anytime soon. It's not the quality of the display, and it's not the quality of the optics. It turns out that in the real world, as you look around, your eye muscles are constantly exercising. They're contracting and loosening as your eyes are adjusting and focusing in. You put a little set of goggles right in front of your eyes, and it's like making a muscle, squeezing it, and keeping it frozen. And after about 30 minutes, your eye muscles start to bond. They start to get dizzy, they start to throw you off, you get terrible eye strain, and your mind starts to play little tricks. So the idea, you're going to see it in a moment, the idea of that kind of object coming into play, I don't think we're going to see it for at least another decade, and I think it will be slightly different than what we're expecting. There is new technology on the horizon. I don't think anybody is going to massively adopt, but it takes medical-grade lasers and it draws a picture on the retina. I'm not going to sign up for it immediately, but the idea that you look at it is different. Now the picture is painted onto the retina with lasers. I'll let another group of people explore that, and then when it gets to prime time, maybe we'll try that. But you're going to see in a minute. I want to just really show you, this was taken for the Twin Awards, and you'll see a couple of segments of how this technology is used. How I typically do it is I just have a simple headset on, $15, $10 headset from Best Buy, as an audio piece, as a set of speakers, and then I interact with the students in a shared 3D space. You'll actually hear one of the students talking about it as they go.
Walsh, the Woods College of Advancing Studies.
That's the normal setup. The virtual reality in particular has allowed me really to break the bonds of being a physically resident faculty member. I no longer have to be on campus. I can conduct these classes anywhere. And in fact, I just conducted one from a hotel lobby while I was traveling. The students likewise are able to participate whether they're at work or whether they're at home or whether they're on campus. And we're able to get together in virtual reality and feel the presence of one another. And so it allows us to have a sense of community even though we're connected only by the internet.
First time I've been a distance learner, in particular with his 3D VR course. I've been able to enter a gaming environment, collaborate with each other, learn from him, discuss our projects. It's very exciting being a part of something so cutting edge in education.
All right, so the idea there was pretty straightforward. We don't really use those optics much at all, except for fun and to show students what can be done. But it's a $10, $15 headset and one computer. The computers are powerful enough to do this today. One of the things that students enjoy, and I'm going to show you the video clip of it, is highlighting things in 3D. When we're in this three-dimensional space together, what we do is we take a game engine, game technology, I'll talk about that, and we rip out all the parts that are the violence, the game, and we put in educational material. One of the things that is useful is to leave a paintball gun in there so that we can tell the students, you saw them pointing, they have all these gestures, they can wave, they can do this, they can scratch their heads, and they can do those things, they can actually dance, they can emote in a physical sense, a virtual physical sense. But it's also very useful for me as a faculty, outside of just pointing. If I tell a student, pay attention to a student maybe slacking off and not being responsive, I say, well, John, why don't you highlight the urn that we just saw in this tomb? And John can go up and walk around it or just look in front of it, and I know he's looking at it. But a more fun way for the students is to take some of the gaming technology that they like and to apply that to an actual highlighting experience. And here we have the notion of a paintball gun, and they love using it to show you that they're paying attention. So I'm going to call, you can see me calling some students that are all out exploring. I call them in. There's an example of a paintball gun. I want them to come. I actually call them. You would hear my voice. It's just standard audio over the internet. I called them and I said, why don't you all highlight the albatross and make sure I know that you're seeing it. There you go. You'd be surprised how excited they are to highlight stuff for you. Now, occasionally highlight each other too. And that's actually G. She is the one who gave you the audio. That is Matt, I believe. And what you see here are them choosing, they choose characters. They also, you don't see it in this video, you hear their voice crystal clear. It's just like a telephone call. And they're talking to me, they're talking to one of us. We have all the audio. They choose characters. I know what they look like, and their names appear as they're talking as well. So I know who's talking, even though I know who they are by voice and by the character they chose. I'm going to show a couple more examples of what comes into play. And as I'm going through this example, I'm really showing you a mashup, basically, of different technologies. What's happened over the years is that these game engines, it's not Pac-Man anymore. That's what I used to play. These are multi-million-dollar simulators that take, on average, in excess of 100 engineering years to create. So they have teams of people working for decades that are trying to create these three-dimensional technologies. We can use them. They're being used for games primarily, but the game engine today the technology that's used to create a game that you go pull off the shelves and buy is more powerful today, it's capable of doing more than the military simulators were in the late 1990s and early 2000s. So you have an amount of multi-million dollar, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of simulator technology at your disposal. Most people are using it to create games. We're saying apply it to the immersive education experience. And I'm going to show you some examples of what are called physics. Fluid dynamics. This is in real time. It shows each one of those particles has a physical property. It's a certain weight, it has a certain stickiness, and it clogs together, drips off, and basically forms an acid bath that interacts with the paint on that car. Now, you, if you were a Hollywood studio, could create a video that looked the same, but this is actually the interaction of those substances in a physical sense. Take the same car and apply fog, and it reacts differently. It's not, first of all, it's not acid, so it's not eating away the paint, so there's a different physical reaction going on. And you also see it smokes and rolls off. And in fire. I hope that was very traditional. And you see that's very different also, the embers burn off. That's one example of physics. There's another example I'll skip on. This one is a little more interesting. This one takes some time to load, so I have a moment or two once I start to load this up. This is a game called Half-Life 2, an extremely popular game. And inside of it, it has a section of the game which is really useful for showing the notion of physics. And these physics, again, were not possible in even most military simulators in the 90s. The level of physics is in these engines today. You just walk shop for $50, you can buy it in the game. It exceeds what the military was able to do in most of the 90s. It really is astonishing. The reason is, it's money. At the end of the day, the graphics industry, the computer graphics industry, the interactive graphics industry, especially, is being driven by the gaming. This is a company called Valve. And again, we're just going to load up the standard game here. The gaming industry is now larger than video rentals. It's now larger than the box office. It is basically becoming the predominant form of entertainment that a generation up to around 30 some odd years old is going to first. When I first started, when I left Boston College, this would be roughly the quality of the virtual reality. That's supposed to be a city. And when you see it, if I were to try and run it full screen like I'm doing now with a large screen, this is what would happen to it. It's really a very small virtual environment, about this big, so you get close to the computer. If I wanted to zoom it up, it would blow it all out. But you'll see in a moment when this fully loads in today's computer, you have no problem with full screen, high quality, immersive environments with lots and lots of detail. Here we go. I'm going to load an existing what's called a checkpoint. It's a point where I got to already that I want to show you where I'm going to start from. This game is a pure game. This is not a learning environment, but it does allow us to explore interactive physics, and you can start to see some of the things you can do when you apply technology. It's a futuristic world. It's sort of a 1984 meets. It's a little bit dark. I don't know if I'll be able to bring that up. Let me try. So I can go up here. The Coke machine. Oh, you can't really see it. I'll get a Coke anyway. Let's say I don't like that Coke. There you go, drop it off, and I'm going to go outside where it's a little bit brighter. So here's the big brother-ish sort of world. This is video combined with 3D, combined with audio. This has been available for a couple of years, so any computer over the last few years has the power to do this. We're just going to explore this world a little bit, and then I'm going to show you some of the physics to get a sense for this is all real. It's not photos. I'm walking up those stairs. I'm going to come right back down those stairs. This is really a police state, if you will. A lot of guards around. And in this alley, there's a fence, and the game, if you will, requires the player to start using physics, picking up milk crates, stacking them up, running up, jumping, going up ladders, coming back down, jumping. See anyone about to do an alien takeover, so we probably want to go this way.
Always starts. First the building, then the whole block. Marvelous. Don't worry, they'll find one.
It's on the scale, it's much darker than what you're seeing. It's very well lit up here, so I wish I could show you in detail. If you want to afterwards, I can certainly show it to you. So now the idea of moving them around. Inside of games like this, there's the notion of mini games, small playable games. These might be in education. They might be specific lessons that people have to learn or tasks that they have to do to learn something in more detail, but more focused. Take this over. Pick that up. There we go. You can see where this is heading. The trick is you throw it high, and it didn't break, so out of frustration, I got it. So that is the notion of destroyable or deformable physics, taking physical objects in the real world. Like the baby here, poor little kid, just wants to ride on the swings. Oh, baby. Right? There we go. Let's get baby a look. All right. Well, maybe baby would come over here. Maybe baby should take a little ride on the merry-go-round. What you see here, which is important, even though this is kind of fun, you actually see that things are reacting the way you would expect in the real world, thanks to physics. Bump into them, for the ball. So you can see those bouncing back and forth. And they come over here and give baby a spin. And maybe baby went flying off. Well, not a surprise. Whoa, ow. Now you can understand when you, even though this isn't something I would get the students to play. The idea is if this was actually a useful learning environment, they just got trampled. Let's try one last thing with baby. These are the guards. They give you, this is using now away from physics towards artificial intelligence. He's giving me some warnings if I don't back off. There we go. This is a notion of interactive characters. And this, for gaming, is essential. The idea that artificial intelligence characters that recognize and they do things and react to you is vital for the gaming experience, but for the learning experience, it's even more vital. The idea that you can take artificial intelligence, you can take the faculty members' experience and expertise, apply it into perhaps a lab or to a lecture where the students can actually start to interact with them. That has huge potential. It's also extremely complicated, and I think it's going to be a ways from eventually showing up here for faculty to put in. What I've shown you so far, the physics is straightforward. Being able to interact with things, being able to interact with things in the real world or the virtual world, it seems like it's in the real world. You take the idea of good graphics, video, audio, physics, and add artificial intelligence, and you start to have a platform for education. All right, let me show you two things. I want to show you the challenges that we have that are starting to be overcome. The real challenge here is any faculty that said this would probably say, I could see potentially my class of X, Y, and Z being turned into an immersive learning experience. How do you start? The answer is faculty can't start. This is so complicated and so time-consuming. There's no faculty in the world, let alone in the individual world, who could sit down at the start of the semester and at the end of the semester wind up with a finished immersive education experience. It cannot happen. It's too complicated. These are the equivalent of mini Hollywood productions. You need teams of people. And so to combat that, we have the notion of an ecosystem, a simple ecosystem that actually has the potential to allow the faculty to do what they need to do without having to touch any of this technology. That revolves around the computer science and the computer graphics undergraduate programs. And the idea here is, again, straightforward. Students really want true portfolio experience. They want to work on projects that are real, not just exercises. So our computer graphics students, we get them up to a certain level in their expertise, and then we have it start to build real stuff that's being used. There's no better place to do that than on campus, where you can team a faculty, say, in history, with a group of students who also have a faculty mentor, and that becomes a development group. And the faculty becomes a director. All the faculty does is sit back and run us with records chair and says, well, I need a virtual environment that shows me Egypt, and I'd like them to be able to explore this tomb, and I'd like them to be able to look at scarab beetles, and I'd like them to be able to see some videos, and like, Steve Martin put them in that might be fun. Can you assemble that for them? And the students, under the direction of the graphics faculty, someone like myself, would actually go off and build that, and then they bring it back to the faculty who sits there and basically refines it. Well, I don't like this isn't accurate. Maybe I should have a voice track, so we just hold a tape recorder or an iPod and record what the faculty has to say, and they layer that in. And over a period of time, it can take 1 or 2 months, you wind up with a immersive education course that the faculty never had to touch a bit of content on. The students got real experience. They now have a portfolio piece that they can be proud of, and the university wins because they have an immersive education course that now the students can take, hopefully at any time, day or night, and that can also be repackaged and sold outside or given to other universities for use. Along those lines, let me show you 2 pieces of content that have been created by our graphics students. We started off as an experiment, and this is the game engine we used for this particular project called Unreal. We started off a couple years ago saying let's start developing the notion of a game-based ecosystem, a game-based learning ecosystem. We take the gaming simulation engine, applying it to learning, and lead an ecosystem where students in the graphics field are getting real experience and faculty are getting content. So we tested to see what could be done in 1 semester with a group of students who had never touched this technology before, starting from ground zero. This is what they came up with in 1 semester. We wanted them, the task was build an interactive Boston Tea Party event. So we're here in Boston, a lot of people hear about it. I learned about it in a black and white textbook from a history, or rather from a football coach. He was our high school history teacher, and it was probably the worst form of learning we had, which was crack open a textbook, look at a couple block diagrams, and we now have what 1 semester of students under the guide of a faculty could produce. I'm going to go through and give you a moment to just walk through it. There's the ship as best that we could build, given the fact that there are no real documents on file to make it historically accurate. So it's a period ship. The box of tea, actually from the tea company. We'll go down below for scale. Tea bags, tea crates, come on through. I'm not going to play the game, but I'll tell you a little bit about it. They actually built a full game around this. The Indians, the characters, everybody's in a form of suspended animation right now. I'm not actually playing a game, I'm just touring it. A little bit of Boston Harbor, a horse for dramatic effect. And a game that they created, the learning experience, first they built this environment in 1 semester, and then they created a game where they took this game engine and they made an actual playable game. You crack open, you have hatchets, just like you do in the Boston Tea Party. You have clubs, hatchets, and there are some muskets and nobody actually fires. You bash open the crates, you get the tea, and you throw the tea overboard. That's the essence of the game. As you're doing that, these characters who are now in the form of suspended animation come up to you and tell you different historical facts, still tied into the storyline. That's an example of what one class can do if properly directed, and you can imagine that being, for example, you can imagine that being applied to any class. I'm going to take and show what we're doing, and this I'm going to show you is being done with our current group of students, being led by one former student who worked on Boston Tea Party when he was Alberto, he's actually sitting at the table here. He did the majority of this himself in roughly how many hours do you think it took you? 40 to 60 hours. One person putting this together. This is becoming the basis of what the students are going to be doing this semester. And really the focus here is to start building up skill sets. So that ecosystem we talked about, students getting real computer graphic experience, want to walk off with something that is real, that they can show and be proud of, and the faculty can actually have something. So here we have, this has been argued by one person, Alberto, again. To Neil Plaza. He got tired of the Boston Tea Party, and he wanted to convince me that this was something the students should work on this semester, and he did it. He went out and he paced it off, and he got a good feel for it. So about 30, 40 hours of time, this is what he was able to create. This is to scale. And what we're doing here is we're actually advertising for the class. We're looking for you. So that's what we're looking for. So this will be now carried through for a couple of semesters. Can you come on up? You can hear that there is actually a bell, gas and bell. This is the very start. We're going to flesh it out and put it in detail and build the virtual campus. Students get the actual experience that they want in 3D and computer graphics, and Boston College gets a meeting space, a virtual reality meeting space, so we can promote the campus. I can actually have eTeaching gas and all, so I can meet my students in the closet for conversations. Come on up, head right into Gaston, and then head down into our classroom. Now obviously it's not finished, but it is about 30 to 40 hours work by one person. So you take someone like Alberto, who really has a passion for this, you couple him with students who are also learning, and you guide them through a basic faculty-driven exercise, and then you couple that with the faculty who say, well, I really do have a class to create. I have X, Y, Z needs to be created, and you get this ecosystem. This ecosystem produces a few things. One, it produces high-quality digital media content. That can be put into libraries. So everything that we create can be put into reusable digital libraries, so the next faculty can just snap pieces together. The other thing it gives you is the ability to reach out to a generation of students who might be pretty tired of sitting in the lecture hall or reading books, and who, I don't know about you, but I have all my students in my class have one of these, and in the middle of the lecture, if I'm at the board and I turn around, half of them are doing this. They're trying to keep them engaged. That is becoming almost impossible for me. What I found is with these immersive online classes, we did a walk and talk. We went just 2 days ago, we went into a forest. There was no learning environment in the forest, but it allowed us to walk together. And I had all the students walking with me, and I would turn around and walk backwards to see them. And I'm just talking. I'm telling them what they need to know in a normal lecture. And I know that they are engaged, and they can't be reading an email, watching TV, and playing. We're just walking around. We have something to do in a shared virtual reality space. I'm giving the lecture that I would normally give. If I were to give that over maybe to standard audio or webcam, students are going to be distracted, but they are exploring now an immersive online space. So having put all this together and seeing, well, where really were we? Let me show you some timelines. Where did we start? From about 1997 to 2002 started to become real. I left Boston College in 92 thinking that by 95, 96, 97, this stuff would be here. What I should have said, this would be here. Turns out it really only started to pick up speed towards the end of the 90s. We've now had a decade of bubbling on this technology. We're getting to the stage now where the technology is in place. The gaming industry is tremendous, and the students, especially the undergrads that we have today, expect us. They expect them to go home and play a game, for example. So if we can basically meld it into our education, I think we're going to adopt a new generation of students. Let me show you what it looked like when we first started. This was the quality of characters. This was the extent of the virtual reality character. That's what I would look like. This is a three-dimensional character from the 90s. All right. Now I'm going to show you the second generation, what we can actually do today. Starting in 2001, what could we do? How could we create characters that were realistic? How could students create and choose their own characters? How could we create? We're creating a three-dimensional Father Woods right now. What kind of quality can we get out of that today? Well, the technology is here. This is one of many products that I do that I can choose, for example. I can choose a couple different faces. I think that was good enough. I now have the ability to see the sliders, make it male, make it female. I say I want to intimidate my students, so there, we're going to class. They respect an older person, so I'm going to bump my age up. They don't want anybody who looks like their age, or they won't listen to me. I can make it a joke, or I can make it real. One of the interesting things that I can do also is I can change a race very quickly, occasion rounds, and so forth. It doesn't take much. These tools, what used to be handcrafted, hundreds and hundreds of hours of work, is now pretty easy to do. I also have the ability to add different emotions. So all these emotions, I'm not going to go through all of them, but you have the ability to emote. So that's what's possible today. We're going to see a transition, again using a game clip from halfway through. We're going to see the transition. What has happened to us since we started? Here's where we started. You'll see the original characters, the quality of the original characters that we had. And then you'll see the quality of the characters we're starting to introduce now. These are the quality characters we're expected to build into our classes now. That's generation number one. Overworked faculty.
We've been rather busy in your absence, Mr. Freeman.
Now look at the quality as we get in. Again, it's not perfect. We know it's virtual. But you have sheen on, just unplugged it as that. You have sheen on the eyes, all these small but important effects that make a difference in capturing some of the attention. You actually have pores on the face. You have little bits of sweat. You can't actually pick it up here, but you get these emotions that I'm talking with you about. This is all possible in real time. When I showed you my students running around and highlighting stuff with the green gun, the green paint gun, green highlighter, this is now the quality. Technically, this is the quality that I can have for my face, the students can have for theirs, of course, looking like them, or anybody else that is like me. Let me show you where we're headed, and this is really where it gets exciting. Again, we're at the cusp, I think, starting to be on the second line. If you take a look at the second line, this graphic quality is not that high. But if you take a look here, this is what is being made possible today on high-end workstations, which means a couple of years. This is what average students will be able to do. They'll have these kind of high-quality characters. All synthetic. Here we have, again, hard to see, but we actually have a tattoo on the face. You can even see the ink impression on the skin, the sheen on the eyes, the pores. And this really is the holy grail, which is possible today on very high-end systems, which means in about 5 years, students will be able to have this kind of quality. If you don't believe that, take a look at what's called the 3D mesh below it. And here's some of the process on how you do this. The steps on making them is becoming insanely simple. You take 2 photographs, profile and front on, that maps onto automatic. That's all you need is 2 photos to get yourself to look in 3D. Now you may not want yourself to look like that. But it's that simple, 2 photos. Even in this case, 1 photo is extrapolated from the 3D case. So the technology has become, well, I'll say easy, but it's become accessible. Here's an example again of a 3D character. You'll see the transition as it transitions from pure computer graphics into the character. This one is really good because of that. If you look closely, you know it's not real. You're sensitive to this kind of graphic work. But the eyes, especially, where a lot of emotion is conveyed, is very good. The sweat, the reflections. And this, we think, is where the students expect it to go because this is what they're seeing on the computer games these days. When the students are sitting at home and they have an Xbox or a PlayStation or a personal computer, they're expecting this quality out of their games, and to engage them in an immersive education environment, they are going to expect roughly this kind of quality as well. Here's an example of new technology that captures real sunlight. It seems trivial, but sunlight is one of the most difficult tasks, or lighting, true lighting is one of the most difficult tasks to accomplish. Taking an eyeball just for fun, that is 3D, it looks like a little figurine, but that is fake as well. Everything you see here is fake. And for timing purposes, as that goes, we're about 5 after 1. We wrap up in about 5 minutes. We're pretty close to closing. And some new technology that, again, this is 10 years out, but it's where we're heading. This technology shows, and we're going to learn, this technology shows how do you create a virtual environment, purely synthetic, just like I've been showing you, but that people really believe is true. Well, you don't just create a realistic looking face, you actually have to have the face reflect the light around you like we do in the world. We're sensitive to that. Here's a very sophisticated first generation approach to that, where strobing lights are shot off in the face, what are called the reflection models on top are captured. That is piped into the virtual environment, and now you start to have not just realistic looking humans, but realistic looking humans that as they walk around the virtual environment, the light reflects. Colored light looks different, shadowed light looks different, dappled light through a forest looks different. So we actually see her process, this whole process doesn't take long, but this will get down to a point where you won't even need it. You're going to capture enough what are called reference models from different skin types and different facial types that you don't need to sit with this. This data is being captured already. It just becomes part of the 3D engine, those multi-million-dollar simulators I'm talking about. And it just happens that in the next couple of generations of technology, as we walk around the virtual environments, we look real, and the environment reflects on our faces and our skin. Now, that's a pure three-dimensional character. She's fake at this point. That is not a human being at that point. That's all synthetic, showing the range of emotions that we walk through. And now you have the example she's walking through. I think this one's Grace Cathedral. Take a look at the colors on her face. It's reflective of the environment, of the chapel she is supposed to be walking through. It's virtual. Really good computer graphic expert, and now we change scene, by the way, so you see it like that on her face. A really good computer graphic expert would look, and you can't see it on the screen, but up on the laptop you can see that there are some artifacts, visual artifacts inside the nostrils and on the ridge of the lip, which cue you off if you're very good at it. But for the most part, this is a human that is indistinguishable from reality, virtually. Jump on through, there's no sense in going through those, but you get the idea that my Lord said it. So we have the idea, it's pretty straightforward of what can we do today? Well, where have we been? Well, in 97 to 2002, we were, I don't want to say nowhere, but we weren't doing this on campus. We started this in the year 2003 at Boston College. All the work up there was working in the computer graphics industry, other universities and other technologies to get technology to a state we could use it. Starting in 2002, we started to say this is now ready for students. In 2003, we launched our first virtual reality class after the Boston College Key Partnership came from, and we are now winding up saying this is feasible. Not only have we done it enough times, we know how the ecosystem works, we know how the technology works. We're exiting that trial phase, and we're now starting to put together comprehensive grant programs so that we can fund larger and larger activity in this space. We hope to basically build the notion of immersive media here first at Boston College, and then spread that concept very rapidly, we hope, to the rest of the universities. This is something that we think is a fundamental change in the way that technology is used on campus. There need to be some formal courses in how it's applied. How do you build an ecosystem? How do you train the students? How do you faculty get involved? That all has to be formalized. And we are, in fact, next month getting our first large grant to fund that there at Boston College and kick it over. Some basic questions that have come up. Can faculty and students get involved today? They definitely can. Students right away. If you have students who are interested in next generation learning, this is the course that they learn how to do all that in. This is where that ecosystem starts, starting to train these students. some of the technology that they learn. It's probably one of the more fun classes the students take because, again, it's so closely related to their entertainment, but these are really hard skills. These skills, both the computer science and as far as content creation, are among the most complex on the planet. Computer science has levels of complexity in quantum space. Computer graphics, especially 3D computer graphics, are at the top of that hill. So it's not easy, but the students tend to enjoy it. There are some questions are, if I have enough of this immersive education content, can I get it to move faster? Answer is probably, it depends on the university. Is it worth the effort? We think so, and that's why we're doing it. And we think that student response is showing. Some questions have come up is, will this be a competitive tool? Will universities start to compete and say, we have X number of immersive education classes where students compete at their own time or remotely, and to report that. I'll touch deep shortly on this. VR addiction, VR schizophrenia, and VR sickness are all realities. Those are concerns that have to be dealt with. People, students get into this, and they love it, and they're into the gaming environments. It's a hard time to get down. So I'll close with that. I know we're running a little bit late, but if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to talk about them.
Are there any other universities in the country that are doing anything like this at this point?
It is happening at the research level. I don't think there are, I'll take that back. Harvard just did one. The Harvard Law School, there's one faculty member at Harvard Law who's opened up a 3D course in second language. And so Harvard, this guy has just started. Basically, he and his daughter, who is also a faculty at Harvard, so this is the way it's going. And we're going to have our class meet in one of these three-dimensional environments online.
I just wanted to mention last week's New York Times had a whole section on how much easier it's going to be to capture facial expressions without all those tiny dots.
That's right.
And the ability to animate deceased people.
Yes, that's right. It's a tool. The ability to create anything that you can conceive of, anything that is real or fake, current or past, is possible. It's just getting easier and faster.
We tried some of this in nursing to do some things with rashes and all that, but like what the students saw on their end was very different from what we put in on our end. You know, the colors sometimes aren't true. And,
yes.
you know, when you're getting down to fine detail, it's not always, the quality isn't always there.
There are technical solutions that probably weren't employed. In the case of the rash, there is something, that's a color-sensitive issue. And what had happened is you saw in the designer system, you couldn't control the end product was the end users. There is something called a gamma setting, which can be put into the image, just captured along with the image, and it basically mimics all the brightness and certain presettings of the master machine straight on, and then it resets all the levels on the end student's machine. So technically there's a solution to that. You just probably wasn't good. Yep.
I'm just curious, which disciplines attract which range levels famous?
I think that right now it has to be at the college level. I think that there is some discipline that needs to come into it for the students, because if you're going to turn students loose in these kind of environments, unless they have parental supervision.
Which academics?
What academics? I think that
economics.
I think that probably history, art are the low-hanging fruit on this tree. There's a lot of information already out there in three-dimensional space. I think medical, virtual cadavers. I think mathematics is fairly abstract, and so it'd be hard to create a virtual environment, but it'd be a very interesting challenge. So I think space and engineering are natural, manufacturing. So it really is anything that you can do, and think about it, anything you can do in the real world and see and manipulate in the real world has a direct correlation with space.
About inter-student communication, you said something about your students speak to one another and you can actually label their speech.
Yes.
Does Second Life have the audio ability, or is it just typing?
It's just typing. Second Life does not have the audio, they just do text chat. We have two things built in, and we chose that engine, the Unreal 2000 in 2004. We chose it because it has voice over IP, voice over the internet. And two things happened. You didn't see any of it here. When I talk, or when a student talks, one thing that happens is their picture pops up on the screen. So I hear them clearly, and I see the photo. And the photo disappears in the electronics. If I have a couple of students talking, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I hear their voices as clearly as we're talking on the telephone. And I also see the pictures pop up, so I can see them. And then if I'm interested in any particular student, I just look at them. So I turn my virtual eyes and look at them, and their name appears above their 3D here. So I have never had a problem identifying students, and never had any question about really. First we get the audio, then we get the picture of them, then we get a label that appears on the name. Second line, I don't think that's really nice.
So you need an Unreal server,
We set them up. We have actually set them up for Boston.
and each of the students needs an Unreal client.
Unreal client, and those are now about $5 to $10. So, and we're hoping to get some industry momentum to have Unreal, the company, donate this to organization. It benefits them, but the students are using it, and they're going to go out and play the game based on this as well. So we also are looking at complete, pure open source solutions. So that, ideally, I mentioned where are we? We're in the graduate process. We want to rebuild this entirely so that it's freely available to everybody. Right now, it costs the students to have to go out and buy the game, and that costs about $5 to $10 depending on where they get it. We also do charge them, instead of textbooks, we charge them server time, because it costs time and money to maintain the server and maintain the account. We expect that all that will disappear down the road. We're not too far down the road.
This server is owned by DC?
No, they're owned outside in cooperation with British Columbia. So they run outside, they should be run by the university, but DC will run the into it. All right.
Are there copyright issues in terms of
Big question. Yeah, and a very important question. I said that we don't create anything we don't have to, we assemble it. Because if you don't, you have to create from scratch, which can be very time consuming. You can't just go out and pluck stuff off the internet and put it together into a course. You could technically, under copyright law, if you closed it down and had it just for your class, you could probably skate by on intellectual property. What you really need to do, what we've done, is anytime we use a piece of content, we actually get permission from the original author. We'd like to use your content in a course at Boston College. We get them credit for it, we document the fact that we use that. Out of that, we want to build, as we start to build more and more of this, is to put more and more of this content into the open libraries so that all the digital media that you need to assemble in class is readily available, all the copyright issues have been clearly made, and it becomes pre-built libraries of different subject matter you can just snap together into virtual courses.
What about in terms of the actual mechanics that you say cost millions to create?
Right.
For those companies that are profitable, you're using it and taking out the characters.
No, that's an important step. I didn't talk about it. That was an important step that happened in probably the last 4 years, sort of about the year 2001, 2002. The game companies who built these multi-million-dollar simulator engines realized that if they make them extensible and make them open, people start building content around them. And then those students, or those people, those hobbyists, that are building that, they gain that skill set. Now they're readily employable by that same company to build games for them. So it's an ecosystem that really works for them. So they actually make what are called mods and modification tools. Oh, that's what we use in our class today. We take a commercial game tool, the students get this, they install it, and it comes with authoring tools and modification tools designed so that you can do this. So the companies that build these multi-million-dollar tools actually want people to become fluent in them, because the more people that are fluent in their tools, the more potential employees they have to build games for them. So it actually works very well for them.
If you have, you talked about in that you had the 3 separate cubes, and then you went into the one where you would have a virtual classroom. You would all be there together. You would maybe have dialogue and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Is it possible to save all of that, sort of record the whole interaction, so that someone who wasn't able to make it for some reason, they can go look and see what conversation happened?
Yeah, the answer is yes. Yeah, the answer is yes. It is possible. We have done it in smaller segments. You can record, you basically start recording at any point, record the whole interaction. The thing that is not simple is the audio, but you can capture that as well. The answer is yes. I should mention that I run 2 classes like this. One is, it is in cooperation with a former student who's a guest lecturer. He comes and shows them all the mechanics and how to use the tools. And I have these online classes. They don't see me in person. And in the follow-up class of this, I never see the students. So those clips I showed you, I never saw the students physically, not even at the start, midterm, or end. Everything was 100% online. And so the idea was that once students were comfortable in the virtual environment, they actually preferred it. They were able to leave it entirely online, and you can continue to record the information that you need for playback. and even serve those up as movies if you wanted to, for students who don't want to go walk through the virtual environment, you can actually play it back to Luke.